Okay, we'll start with this. Will Mayweather on fighters wanting Pacquiao? Stop chasing this old man. Mayweather says the younger fighters should be fighting each other rather than chasing after WBA welterweight champion Manny Pacquiao, who's quoted as saying, "It's his prerogative to do what he wants to do. I don't have anything against him, but it's not me," said Mayweather to Fight Hype when asked if he's concerned about 41-year-old Pacquiao's health and still fighting at his age. It's sad that you hear guys say, "I want to fight Manny Pacquiao." Manny is 41 now. Don't chase him. You young guys chase each other. Stop chasing this old man. If the opportunity presents itself, go out and do what you gotta do. Let Manny Pacquiao pick and choose who he wants to fight. With everything he's accomplished, hopefully, he's made some smart investments, said Mayweather. I myself have mixed feelings when it comes to Manny. When it comes to Manny, still lingering, still hanging around. You see, I agree that Manny's earned the right to pick and choose. That if anybody has, he has.
It's true.
That while Manny has earned the right to pick and choose, he's an active reigning world champion, and that does come with a certain set of requisites, responsibilities, obligations. What the fans want to see from a world champion, that there are so many guys running around with so many belts. We want to see these belts consolidated. We want to see one guy holding every single one of these world titles. And
comes to Manny.
Unless Manny has intentions of unifying his world title with the other titles that are out there, he's standing in the way. I mean, let's just be honest with each other, folks. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Come on.
If Manny has no intention of fighting the Terrence Crawfords, the Errol Spencers of the welterweight division, isn't he an obstruction to the unification process?
Isn't he?
Because you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. And if Manny's not going to do it, but he's still holding on to that title, okay, he's standing in the way. I am ambivalent when it comes to Manny Pacquiao, still hanging around at this age, at this stage in his career. Him being the biggest name in the welterweight division certainly affects
The landscape.
what's going on. Because just like Floyd said, all of these young guys, they're after him. They want him when they should want to fight each other. Look, I understand it's prize fighting. I understand it's pugilism. And I understand that in the welterweight division, Manny Pacquiao, even today, still represents the biggest payday. I get that. But there are far too many guys putting what they could be doing on the back burner in the hope that they win the sweepstakes, that they land the Pacquiao fight. And you may or may not get that fight. Anyone from Errol Spence to Danny Garcia to Mikey Garcia to Sean Porter. I mean, for God's sake, Amir Khan is still holding out hope that he can land a Pacquiao fight.
After all these fucking years.
You know, I get fucking sick of hearing how deep the welterweight division is when it's turning out to be a bit of a dud. I'm sorry, but it is. Oh, granted, there's no shortage of talent there, but it's not shelling out the kind of fights you want to see as frequently as it should, given how deep a division it is.
It's just not.
You're always hearing about how deep this division is in terms of talent, in terms of how many good fighters campaign in this weight class. But, you know, where's your Crawford versus Garcia, or your Garcia versus Ugas, or your Ugas versus Thurman, your Ugas versus Crawford, your Crawford versus Thurman?
Wow.
You know that it's bad enough. The politics of boxing often stifle what fights can and can't happen, but it doesn't help when you have so many guys fixed on fighting one guy who really doesn't have anything else to prove, and at this point has reserved his right to choose. This really just compounds an already existing problem in this division, that the politics themselves are preventing certain fights from happening, but it doesn't help when so many guys are fixed on fighting one guy. I don't know how much longer Manny intends to stick around, but it can't help his situation in particular, given what the COVID-19 pandemic has done to what was the existing boxing schedule. We're now transitioning out of this global crisis, seeing the first glimpses of what could be the next boxing schedule, the next string of fights. But this certainly has to have hampered whatever plans Manny Pacquiao had for what was his next fight, coming off of that sensational win over Keith Thurman. Time is always of the essence in this sport, as it is a young man's sport. For a guy like Manny, that rings particularly true, as his days, they are numbered, whether you want to accept it or not. I don't know what Manny plans on doing next, but you'll excuse me for saying so, that I look forward to the day that he finally hangs them up, because here today, he is a bit of an obstruction. He is a bit of a distraction. He's a legendary fighter. There's no doubt about that. He is proven, having nothing left to prove. But in having nothing left to prove and still hanging around, that's what he is. He's a distraction. In other news, Chris Eubank Jr. wants Alvarez, Triple G, Charlo, and Andre. He says he's ready. He was quoted as saying, "I want the big names. I want the belts. That's what I want over the next 12 months. I'm ready right now. I've been training," Eubank Jr. told BoxingScene.com in an interview. "I would love to fight Gennady Golovkin right now. That would be an amazing fight. He's still a very dangerous fighter. I think he won at least one of the Canelo Alvarez fights. You can't ever underestimate a fighter like Triple G, with his experience and power. I tried fighting him years back, but he fought Kell Brook instead. That fight was taken away from me, and it's a regret. I know Canelo Alvarez has some other people in mind, but I would love to fight him as well. Who knows what's going on with him and what weight division he wants to fight at. I also have a rivalry with Jermall Charlo that started up during our last fight. At the press conference, there were words exchanged, but I know I can beat him and take him out." Eubank Jr. is also eyeing a fight with WBO middleweight titleist Demetrius Andrade. Andrade is also having a hard time finding credible dance partners, and Eubank Jr. could be a strong name that he's long been looking for. Eubank Jr. most recently made his U.S. debut in December and scored a second-round TKO win over Matvey Korobov. The unfortunate thing for me is that I've only had one round of professional boxing since February 2019. Would a non-title, after the coronavirus, be a good thing before I challenged for a world title? Probably. I wouldn't say no to it. If the opportunity presents itself for a world title, I'll take it, because that's what I want. I'm 30 years old now. I need the big fights. Chris Eubank Jr. is on the money when it comes to that observation. He's 30 years old. He's never really been a full-fledged world champion. The only title of any kind he's ever held is the IBO title, and let's be honest, folks, that title doesn't mean a lot.
In the greater scheme of things.
Well, I know that there have been some notoriable fighters in the past and even in the present that were in possession of the IBO title, but that title is not recognized by the major four.
Nope.
The WBA, the WBC, the WBO, and the IBF. Chris Eubank Jr. has never really been a full-fledged champion. He needs the big fights. The clock's ticking for him the same way it's ticking for most everyone else. He needs big fights, and he needs big fights now.
Stop pussyfooting around.
He's mentioned quite a few names here, some notoriable players. He mentioned Canelo Alvarez, but most everybody mentions Canelo Alvarez. At the end of the day, it's up to Canelo who wins the sweepstakes, and I don't think that Chris is so much as a blip on Canelo's radar. I just don't. He also mentioned the name of Triple G, which seemed quite tactless, because we all know that Triple G's not the fighter here today that he was yesterday. Yesterday when Chris could have fought him. But the constant haggling from his side of things is what costed Chris that fight. We talked about it in a previous video. I'll leave the link to it in the description box. I wouldn't say that Triple G's completely off the table for Chris. I think a situation is more negotiable with Triple G than it is with Canelo. With Canelo, it's anybody's guess what he's going to do, where he's going to go, and who he's going to fight. But as far as Triple G, he seems to be taking his foot off the gas. He's willfully fighting this Kamil Zeremata guy. He could easily go into a Canelo Alvarez fight. He could easily have a unification match with the likes of Demetrius Andrade, but he's choosing to fight this Kamil Zeremata guy. What that indicates to me is that Triple G is trying to get the very most he can out of this DAZN deal. He's still got a couple of fights left on it, and given the kind of money that he's been making, having signed that deal, doesn't want to go rushing things. Not when he can get multi-million-dollar paydays fighting the likes of a Steve Rolls, or in this case, a Kamil Zeremata. Because he's slowing things down, I think the name of a Chris Eubank Jr. in a fight that perhaps could be held in the United Kingdom, billed as a pay-per-view. I think that those are the kinds of possibilities that perhaps Triple G would be open to. The thing is that Chris, he's not on the Matchroom DAZN side of things. He's on the PBC side of things. That's where he last fought against Matvey Korobov. If Chris really wants that fight, that kind of a situation, he's going to have to make a move. Triple G versus Eubank Jr. is a fight that you could stage in either the United Kingdom or the United States. The viability of the match is there. What is questionable is Chris's situation over there at the PBC. What kind of deal, if any deal, do they got going on for this guy?
What's the deal?
Would he cross the street in all the ways that so many of the other PBC's fighters are unwilling, regardless of what kind of money they're offered? That's the question. I'll tell you, he can get a Triple G fight before he can get a Canelo fight. Can I tell you that?
Yeah.
I just told you that.
I know.
It could happen depending on Chris's flexibility and willingness to cross the street. Now, Chris also mentioned the name of Jermall Charlo. A very realistic option for Chris, given
Even.
where he is now and where his last fight took place. The thing is that Jamal's talking about going up to 168. He's talking about David Benavidez.
He's talking about him for?
I don't know why he's talking about him, but that's what he's talking about. He plans on going up to 168, so the question there is, would Chris be willing to follow him back up to the super middleweight division where Chris kinda just left from? I mean, lest we forget, he did just come from there, you know. He had that fight with George Groves up there. He lost that fight against George Groves up there.
Up there?
That's where he came from. Is he going to follow Jamal Charlo up there?
Up there?
Is Jamal Charlo such a big fight, such a big financial incentive that Chris is going to go back up to super middleweight when he just left there?
Huh?
Tell you what, for going up there and fighting Jamal Charlo, why don't you stay put, stay right where you are, see about fighting Demetrius Andrade. Do you like that?
Yeah.
Demetrius Andrade, he's got a world title like Jamal's got a world title. Difference is, if you fight Jamal at 168 pounds, it's for nothing.
Nada.
It's for nothing. And supposedly, that's where he's going. So why don't you stay where you are?
Yeah.
See about fighting Demetrius Andrade. See if you can get the kind of money to fight Andrade that they offered Jamal Charlo
Yeah.
to fight Andrade. What about that? You like that?
I like that.
Now, if you can fight Jamal at 60, you fight him at 60. Because at 60, it's for a belt. At 68, it's for nothing.
Zippo.
Tell you what, I got questions. Do you make the same money fighting Jamal that you can make fighting Andrade? That's a curious question. You see what kind of figures Eddie Hearn's offering these guys. You see what side of the street Demetrius Andrade's on. I've got a question. Would Chris Eubank Jr. make more money fighting Demetrius Andrade, or would he make more money fighting Jamal Charlo?
It's a fair question.
I'll tell you what I think. I think the Andrade fight is a riskier fight than the Charlo fight, but the Andrade fight yields bigger rewards. Bigger risks, bigger rewards. As strange as this might sound, I think an Andrade fight pays more than a Charlo fight, not because of Andrade's marquee value, not because of his drawing power, per se, but because of DAZN's wallet. They've got a big one. Chris, you know, he's 30 years old, this guy. Never been a full-fledged world champion. He's got to put on his big boy pants on, and he's got to make some big decisions. Do you stay where you are and hold out for a Charlo fight? Is it worth that much to you? Or do you venture outward and see what else is out there for you? And finally, in heavyweight news, Joe Joyce is open to having an interim bout before facing Dubois. Olympic silver medal winner Joe Joyce would consider the possibility of a warm-up bout before fighting fellow undefeated heavyweight contender Daniel Dubois. Joyce and Dubois were initially scheduled to collide in a highly anticipated clash in April, but it was pushed back due to the coronavirus pandemic. The fight was rescheduled to July 11th. That date is now unlikely due to the proposed rules set out by the British Boxing Board of Control. The biggest issue with staging the fight in July is the British Boxing Board of Control's requirement that no fans could be in attendance. Frank Warren, promoter for both fighters, has made it clear that he won't consider a closed-door setting for Dubois versus Joyce. Joyce's manager wants his boxer to stay busy and earn some money as well, so an interim fight is certainly a real consideration. We have a date of July 11th, but I'm not confident that it's going to happen, Joyce's manager, Sam Jones, told Mirror Fighting. It comes to a point where Joe will have been out of the ring for over a year, so he needs to have a fight. He needs to have a run out, whoever it's against. He needs to earn some money, but at the same time, he needs to dust the cobwebs off and get match fit. It's the same for Dubois, but he fought at Christmas, and so he's had a couple of fights since Joe last fought. Joyce needs some rounds in the bank, and if he doesn't fight Dubois next, needs to fight someone who won't just fall over in a round. We're open to fighting Dubois behind closed doors, but promoter Frank Warren has said he won't do it, and that's his decision to make. Quite right, this is a decent-sized fight. The fighters want to earn decent-sized money in front of a decent-sized audience. It would be an awful pity, an awful waste to the boxing fans over there in the UK if a fight like this, where someone's likely to get put in a fucking hospital, were to happen behind closed doors without an audience present. I mean, this is what I've been telling you all along. Big fights, the ones we're all waiting for, these aren't going to be the first fights we see coming out of this pandemic. These aren't going to be the kind of fights we see potentially staged behind closed doors, because it's a waste. It defeats the purpose. The purpose of a big fight is a big audience, big money.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that out of the fight staging it behind closed doors, which begs the question, why would you stage it in the first place? Given the needs of Joe Joyce in this situation, you know, Joe's no spring chicken. This guy's in his 30s already. I know that there may be those out there who might interpret this as some apprehensiveness from the Joyce side of things, that, you know, he's nervous. This Dubois fight's a big fight, arguably the biggest fight he's ever been in. He's got cold feet. He wants a warm-up fight. I don't take it that way.
I don't.
Most boxing fans, they're fucking idiots. They're unrealistic. By the time July rolls around, it will have been a year since this fighter had a fight. By the time July rolls around, the provisions put in place by the British Boxing Board of Control, they don't allow for gatherings. They don't allow for big crowds, big audiences, and those kinds of situations. So if those provisions are still going to be in play by the time July gets here, why not use that as an opportunity to let Joe get some rounds in before the big fight goes down? Yeah, Bryant Jennings fight, that might seem like yesterday, but that was last year, in July. That's how long it's been. So you ask me if Joe needs this, you ask me if this is fair, and I dare say yes. Why waste Dubois versus Joyce in a studio setting with no audience when you can let those two guys get in there one more time, shake off the cobwebs, dust themselves off, get some rounds in, and get ready to fucking kill each other thereafter? I say do it. Boxing fans are so desperate to see two guys punch each other in the face right now, they'll take any two guys in the ring.
Right about now.
Joyce versus a bowl of potato salad.
They'll watch it.
I'll fucking watch it. I mean, look at how desperate boxing fans have been to see two guys swap punches. They were taken in a UFC card this past weekend.
Jesus.
That is how desperate things have become. So you ask me if this is an ideal scenario, and I say yes. Go for it. Let both of those guys have interim fights.